Get a chair and sit down.
Is this my good side?
Yes, this is
This a good background?
Yes.
Okay.
Trân trọng một cái thứ gì đã sắp mất.
good mess. Okay.
Containable mess.
Khoảnh khắc nào anh thấy mình được yêu thương nhất trong năm nay?
Hồi sáng anh đi trễ, xong cái anh hỏi cô Megan là xin lỗi, thì cô Megan bảo là không sao đâu mọi người, cũng nhầm thời gian hoài. Thì anh nghĩ đó là cái cảm giác mà mình được quan tâm nhiều nhất. Cái bình thường thì người ta sẽ bác lỗi cái lỗi sai của mình, nhưng mà đó cũng là một cách. Nhưng mà cách thứ hai là cái gì đã qua thì đã qua rồi, thì có một cách thứ hai là khuyến khích người ta làm đúng.
Anh nào là khoảnh khắc tình cảm nhất của năm Korea Year?
Khoảnh khắc tình cảm nhất năm là vài tháng trước, khi tao nhìn thấy một couple của trường mình đạp nhau chở nhau trên chiếc xe đạp ở giữa công viên, và chiếc xe đạp đó là chiếc xe đạp của tao.
Đâu là hoạt động tham vọng nhất của bạn năm nay?
Okay. So I think the most ambitious thing that I planned for these years is the Fulbright Musical Club. But unfortunately, I wasn't able to gather enough people to actually do that with me. So I look forward to welcome the student in the next year's student to kind of gather up and do that with me. So yeah. So basically, I participated in the Fulbright Event Hub currently, and the diplomat at the beginning of the year, and I think they both helped me to grow in different aspects of myself. So for the diplomats, I learned a lot about politics, something that I would never choose to tackle when I was young. So there's a bunch of new things to learn, and I'm always kind of thirst of knowledge. So it's something that's really helped me in my personal growth. And for the Fulbright Event Hub, it's kind of a weird experience actually. So it's appeared to be some place that people kind of chilled out and kind of gather and talk about different stuff rather than actually something very formal, which made me feel really kind of comfortable when working with them. And besides that, we also learned how to organize different events and how to actually engage people in those events as well. And I think the experience is going to help me a lot in my future career, I think. And building my own company as well, I look forward to that in the next year. I think diversity is something that's really iconic at Fulbright, and we do really good, like do really well in our own field and in our ability. So I think that it's really nice when people come from different expertise, helping each other to build something brand new. And I think that's something like one of the most worthy experience I have ever had at Fulbright in general.
I think at the beginning of the year, I volunteered to be a Scrum Master of the sprint to design the Learn to Co-Learn module. So you all through the Learn to Co-Learn module, right? So we ran the first sprint, Learn to Co-Learn. We ran the first sprint to design the Learn to Co-Learn module, which I was a Scrum Master. The sprint didn't go well, and we stopped it. We stopped sprinting. Have you heard of that?
No, okay, tell us more.
So we pull a things called emergency break. So we just stop the sprint. That's what I mean. Emergency break. But you still have the Learn to Co-Learn module. Why is that? Because we ran another sprint. And no one would expect that I volunteer again to be a Scrum Master of the second sprint. And yet you guys still have the Learn to Co-Learn module. I think I'm in a good position to do that. That's what I think. But I also think I don't want to stop the things that I started in. and also when we stop the first sprint, it's not a bad thing. We stop because we have to stop because we didn't see it going anywhere. And so the most important thing about stopping is we learn a lot from that. And so from those learning, I feel like I can make it right the second time. So we put together another team. I was still a Scrum Master, and we put it up. And I heard that you guys, some of you like the Learn to Co-Learn module, so I'm happy with that. I think I'm happy that Fulbright allowed me to make those decisions. Like, I mean, it can happen another way, right? Okay, you were the Scrum Master on the first sprint. It didn't work. So you should not be the Scrum Master for the second time. Let other people do that. You cannot do it. But the way Fulbright works is allow people to try things and make mistakes and learn about it. And so that set up my whole year. The mindset of not afraid to try new things as long as it fit with the Fulbright mission. It fit with the things that we want to do here, which is empower students.
I think I would frame it under vulnerable. First time that I came here, I asked a lot of people like, how much power do I have in order to co-design a curriculum or an activity or something? But the actual answer is it doesn't matter how much power you have. I was very confident at first place, but actually, like, how can you manage with that power? So there's a time when I joined a co-design class, and I think that I'm a little bit vulnerable, and like I feel unsafe with that power. I don't know how to use it as good as I can, or like at the expectations would have. I would say that it's the co-design spirits when we understand the positions, responsibilities, and also to be vulnerable in front of power that we have.
Các câu designer nhất của mình là tối hôm qua lúc đang quay cái documentary phim cho câu design year thì tụi mình nhận được thông tin từ ông Tủa. Ông hét lên là vợ ba sắp bị cấm chiếu ở Việt Nam do có bạn nữ 13 tuổi đóng. Và lúc đó thì mọi người trong nhà được tắt hết tất cả các thiết bị để bật laptop lên để check xem thử là chiếu phim nào còn vợ ba gần Dom nhất. Thì cái gần Dom nhất mà mọi người biết là BHD ở 3 tháng 2, cách Dom khoảng 40 phút phóng xe không phải là chạy xe. Sau đó thì mình với ông Tủ quyết định chạy tới rạp BHD 3 tháng 2. Nhưng mà lúc đi thì cảm giác hơi buồn, tại vì cảm giác đang mất cái gì ấy. Thì đến lúc mà gần đến rạp nhá, thì cái đường một chiều đó 3 tháng 2 nó khá là rộng, xong rồi tại coi phim nhiều mấy cái cảnh là long shot thì mình cảm giác kiểu đang lạc lõng ấy. Xong rồi đến rạp 3 tháng 2 thì có còn phim, lúc đó mình gọi nhắn tin, xong gọi điện, xong rồi quay video lại để lưu giữ khoảnh khắc, với lại kêu mọi người đến. Thì mình đặt 19 vé cho 18 người. Ông Tuổi thì còn một vé để lưu giữ khoảnh khắc, gọi là ông cất á. Xong mà tại vì đấy là khoảnh khắc câu designer với mình nhất ấy, thì đó là khoảnh khắc mà mọi người cùng trân trọng một cái thứ gì đó sắp mất ấy.
Is this my good side?
Yes, this is
Thì đó là những gì mình được học ở trường Fulbright, là có một số thứ mà công chúng họ không trân trọng thì tụi mình trân trọng. Nhưng mà đó là lần đầu tiên mình ở trong một cái cộng đồng mà mọi người trân trọng một cái thứ gì nó hơi chung chung nhưng mà không ai để ý tới. Thì lúc đó rất là buồn, nhưng mà lúc sau thì vui. Không biết là cái lúc mà mọi người đang coi cái này thì phim Vợ Ba có còn chiếu không?
So, what is the saddest moment to you in câu design year?
In generally, I think the saddest time it's for myself is when I put a lot of effort in something and then I don't achieve it. It feels sad, but it's reasonable because there are people who's better than you. And there's a lot of things can name, even there's assignments or academic life or your friendship. When I put a lot of efforts in friendship or something or activities or anything, I feel really sad if the result is not as I expected. But well, life, there's people better than myself, and there's people are also like try hard the same level as I am. So yeah, I think that's.
Tao ngồi ở trên, tao nằm ở trên cái tủ. Đúng rồi. Đúng rồi.
Nằm tủ nào?
Tủ phòng tao.
Cái lên đó chi vậy?
Nó nằm trên cái tủ, sau đó tao chụp hình đưa cho cái Multimedia Club, cả hội cười điên dại luôn.
Khoảnh khắc buồn cười nhất, ví dụ như khoảnh khắc hôm qua, tối qua gần 10 giờ rồi, xong thì tự nhiên biết được là một trong những cái phim mà mọi người muốn xem nhất bị cấm, mà bởi vì vào unfollow cái người spoil nhiều nhất cái phim đấy, thì vừa vào trường người ta share cái link là bị cấm, ok, vào đọc không thấy bị cấm. Xong nửa đêm hai đứa chạy hì hục đi xem có vẽ không, xong thì ok, xong cuối cùng thì đếm thì quái nào lại đếm thừa mất một vé. Đó phải cảm được sự buồn cười.
Cảm giác đa dạng trong thống nhất. Bên đây cũng vậy, chẳng bao giờ ra đường, lúc nào cũng chỉ muốn trong nhà ngủ thôi. Hôm qua vừa đột nhiên nghe vé cấm cái mọi người xách xe nẹt bô chạy. Mọi người bỗng nhiên quyết tâm đoàn kết. Xong đến nơi thì kiểu có mọi người support sẵn, mọi người tích cực đi mua vé trước này nọ. Cảm ơn Vinh đó.
The most co-designing moment for me this year would have to be Module 3 when Kinho and I taught rhetoric together. After having gone through that module, I have a lot more trust for them and what they're able to do together.
Oh, okay. Can you tell us what is the most co-designing activity or moment you have done in this year?
It definitely made me revise my approach to the co-design year. So before rhetoric, I didn't really have many ideas about what co-designing looked like. Before that, I had only taught Bridge, and I tried to bring like co-design elements into Bridge. We renegotiated the syllabus several times during the Bridge program. But, and then learning to co-learn was the other module I taught, but that was more or less set, a set curriculum that all teachers taught. So I don't really feel like I pushed myself to discover what co-designing could be until rhetoric. And then after that, I feel like my approach to it is much more viewing students as almost like research assistants. So, you know, I guess when I say research assistant, I guess I mean a less experienced colleague in some way, someone that I'm working with, but who I might need to give some guidance to. And that's the way I've approached all of my courses since then, is me as kind of the research guide or supervisor, and co-designers as research assistants. And I think that was shaped largely by rhetoric, by the way that Kinho and I eventually, once we realized that it was chaos, and we needed to give some structure to the co-designers in order to allow them to produce something, then we basically let them choose their groups that they would research, and we let them work together in groups to deeply investigate one area of the rhetoric course. And at the end of that, their products were amazing. They wrote these very impressive research proposals, including literature reviews. And I think the success of that way of approaching the rhetoric course led me to view the things that I did in Module 5, for example, in a similar way, and try to use the potential of the co-designers as research assistants. So I think I'm kind of weird in this regard because I've only taught with Kinho. I taught learning to co-learn with Kinho, and I taught rhetoric also with Kinho. I think all other faculty members have taught with at least 2 other faculty members, co-taught with at least 2 others at this point. So for me, my co-teaching experience is very much shaped by my experience co-teaching with Kinho. And I think that it's difficult at first because when we started learning to co-learn together, I just met him. He just arrived on campus suddenly in August. And it was like, oh, we're going to co-teach together. So it was a very slow process of getting to know each other and figuring out not only his approach to teaching and his approach to his discipline, but also like how we viewed the students, how much planning we wanted to do ahead of time and how much we wanted to do spontaneously. I would say it's been a very gradual growth of trust as we figured out how each other kind of perform or what our perspective is in the classroom. And as that trust developed, it became so much more interesting and easier actually, because even if we were not fully prepared for class today or even a little bit nervous about what the students, if we had a proposal to give the students, we would be nervous about how the students would react and not really know what we would do if the students reacted a certain way. But I think as far as his different field, I think that that affects the way we do some activities in class. I think that his perspective from another field very much affected the way we approach debates. Kinho loves debate. I have realized. I actually, despite being an English writing and speaking teacher, I don't really like debate. So having that, I don't think it's necessarily related to his field, but maybe his personality or his interests. Like that definitely influenced the way that we executed class activities. But I think the way that his field has most influenced my work with him is actually not in teaching, but in research. So the data that we collected during rhetoric and analyzing that together, his quantitative perspective towards that data is very different than my qualitative perspective towards the data. And that has come up with some very interesting results so far.
So this year, I think the most co-design activity that I was involved in was probably the rhetoric course that I co-taught with Pam. My expertise is in neuroscience, so I'm not supposed to be teaching rhetoric, right? So, after doing the logics and limitation course with Graham, one of the things that I felt was that just prototyping a course and asking students for feedback is not really co-design. It is a lot. It's basically what a lot of us would do in normal classes anyway. So I had some conversations with other faculty members, and I found that Pam is the one that has really thought a lot about the meaning and the reasons for co-designing, because we are a Vietnamese university and many of the faculty are from overseas. We really don't know a lot about the Vietnamese context. So the co-design year, one of the things that we can accomplish is to involve students in the designing of the courses, assignments, syllabi, readings, to help us better situate the content materials in the Vietnamese context. And we couldn't do that on our own. And after talking with her, kind of getting a glimpse of her vision, I said, can I join you? Can I be a part of this? So, and that's what we did. We came into the class and asked students to take more ownership of the co-design process and really think about very carefully, evidence-based research, what a good rhetoric course in a Vietnamese university should look like.
And how did it go with the students?
I think initially they were like, okay, sure, right? And then when we started asking them deeper questions and justifying their answers, they were like, no, we're only supposed to give feedback. You should teach us, because we don't know anything about rhetoric. We don't even know what the word means, right? So they started stepping back and said, no, we don't want to take ownership. You are faculty, you should take ownership, and we'll just give you feedback. And that was very disappointing to Pam and I. And so we had, after class, we had discussions and trying to figure out what to do, and we were kind of frustrated, right? So, and we brought it back to the class, and we talked to them about it. I mean, the day before before that morning, before going into the class that morning, we really don't know what was going to happen. We were basically hoping that we can get the students to re-embrace the idea of more partnership and less just feedback. But we didn't know whether they would be willing to do that, because our sense was that the majority didn't want to do it. Right? So yeah, we got that sense on a Friday. So we had Saturday and Sunday to kind of get in the mud and feel uncomfortable and vulnerable and not knowing what the next week was going to look like, and a lot of uncertainty over that weekend. So that Monday we went back to students and had a talk about it. And fortunately, right, they were willing to do more active co-designing with us, given the condition that will give them more framework. I learned a lot from Pam because rhetoric is much more in her wheelhouse than mine. I've taught writing intensive courses, and I was involved in developing a writing across a curriculum program at my previous institution. So I've thought a lot about thinking and writing, right? But so that was kind of my contribution, right? But I think she really took the leadership in this course. I was more like a supporter.
I don't know what I am, I guess, anymore. I would definitely say that Kin Ho, myself, and the 18 rhetoric co-designers co-created the course together. And not only that, but that the syllabus that had been previously produced by the faculty sprint influenced the final product. So in that sense, you could call a lot of people co-creators of that course. And I think that's what we're doing with everything in the co-design year, is co-creating things. I've started reading a lot about co-creation recently, not co-designing. Co-designing has a more like engineering or design world context. But in the pedagogy literature and teaching literature, there's a lot said about co-creation. So I've started to think about us as kind of co-creators of not only the curriculum, but the university and the culture, all of that. So yes, I would self-identify as a co-creator.
What is the most affectionate moment or activity that you have had in this year?
Had to have been towards the end of Vietnamese studies, in fact the last day of class. It had been a long block, 4 weeks, very intense, a lot of tears, and there were some shed that day too, because I realized in that moment just how special this project was, and how working with the students on something that wasn't always the easiest to discuss had been so rewarding for me. And in that moment, I realized that being a professor at Fulbright was more than just being an instructor and conveying knowledge, but it was engaging with students from whom I could really learn a lot myself. And that was, I think, certainly one of the most special moments I had. That was, so as you said, that was the first kind of formal experience I had teaching at Fulbright after learning to co-merit. And one of the things that I was actually really worried about starting Vietnamese studies was I'd never taught students in Vietnam before. And here I was suddenly in charge of teaching about Vietnamese history to Vietnamese students. And I wanted to make sure that that process was going to be as inclusive and thoughtful as I could make it. In my mind, history is very much a conversation. Learning is always a conversation. And I'm really happy that we emphasize that at Fulbright. I would encourage students who want to engage with the world around them in more profound ways, and whether that's through forms of civic engagement or activism, or just general community service, that looking back to history should be a touchstone, and I'm very happy to hear that.
That was very emotional, but was there any funny moment at the class?
Oh, Vietnamese studies is full of funny moments. although perhaps well, we had a lot of fun on the Hui trip. That was a fantastic experience to be able to bring students out and to engage with history directly, which also led to some particularly amusing moments with the students. Perhaps the most fun I had was on our final evening. We had a night of music by Chun Kum Song that then somehow evolved into an open mic night.
And how was the experience in Module 5 different from Module 3?
Yeah. The experience in Module 5 was a lot different than the experience I had with Vietnamese Studies in Module 3. And in some ways, in a very good way. Module 3 was very well structured. We had a pretty well designed course that was a bit more conventional than maybe some of the others. But Module 5 gave me some space and the other people I worked with to kind of experiment in a low stakes environment with different things that we'd been thinking about. So like reading groups had been one of them, these mini courses were another. And I really enjoyed the reading group experience in particular because it didn't have the formality of a course, but it was also a lot more intimate. So it was a lot closer to something in the US that we would call like a seminar, in which you have a small group of students and you're just reading some texts really closely. And that just created a lot of really interesting teachable moments for Graham and I to take a step back from the reading sometimes and actually have these mini classes on different topics, whether that was introducing students to, say, the history of mercantilism in Europe in the 16th and 17th centuries, or kind of explaining different theories of growth and how those theories of growth have evolved over time, or trying to look at why inequality happens in different regions, and again, what are the different theories behind that. And that was fascinating, and a lot of it was just, it wasn't very planned, but it emerged organically, and that's something I really enjoyed about my experiences with Module 5.
Can you tell us what is a moment that makes you think that that's like the most empowering moment or activity of the year?
You know, I think what you're describing is sort of like building a beautiful monument and saying which stone was the most important stone that got put in place. I don't know that I can say that there's one moment that I think was the most empowering moment of the co-design year. I can see a lot of moments where there were problems and situations and struggles that students were able to overcome, and the growth that accumulates as a consequence of that, I think, is really powerful. You know, but I don't know that there's one moment that all hinged on. I think this was the co-design year was a lot of effort, a lot of grit, a shared work, and almost growth happening without anybody noticing it because it was on so many little things. You know, students making decisions about club activities, participating in different kinds of course experiences, thinking about different kinds of curricular structures, inputting on things. And, you know, out of that we have this curriculum, this program that's really starting to be built on a culture of people who understand what learning together is like. And that to me is really what's powerful about the co-design year. But I don't know that there's any one moment where that stands out to me. I could name a whole lot of moments where I see that coming from. Yeah, so, you know, I think what's really true is learning doesn't really happen in a moment. It happens as a consequence of effort and engagement, and well, I think this attitude, you know, there are instances that the co-design year has made some real progress. I mean, you can see it happen. I was thinking of some of my favorite moments of the co-design year, and one of them was certainly the experience of the rhetoric students, a truly co-designed experience of getting into the mess of that question and trying to produce something new as a consequence. And what's amazing is that didn't just produce a new course, it produced a new group of students and faculty out of it. those, the students were different coming out of that. The faculty were different. Their relationship was different out of that. And it was different in this kind of trustful, trust-building way, an empowering way that I think left everybody really changed as a consequence. Another one of my favorite moments is when we gave the logic and limitation students, and I taught in that module, an activity to do computer programming and told them to learn some things overnight. And it was a really big problem and challenge. And I think it was too hard, and it didn't matter. All the groups worked on it anyway, and we came up with all kinds of interesting ideas as a consequence of that activity. So even some of the mistakes, I think, we had one of the first breakdowns we had for me was this, changing the vacation, thinking that I was helping by trying to change the schedule of vacation without talking to everybody first. That kind of experience, even though it's a mistake, led to me learning that I needed to be in better communication with the co-design year students. So, I think that this attitude that I'm talking about gets developed by experiences like that. And again, they're experiences that don't always feel good. In fact, all of those experiences that I named had moments of real struggle and sometimes dealing with difficult emotions. But it produces a different kind of relationship, a different orientation to the world, and a different sense of community between people as a consequence.
So power is something that the Fulbright community, focuses on redefining. And there's a certain shift in the dynamic between adults and children and teachers and students. And can you share your thoughts on how Fulbright has redefined these concepts?
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot to say about that. I think one of the things when it comes to pedagogy and learning, empowerment is, I think, a really important component of a learning process. And I'm thinking of the book Pedagogy of the Oppressed, and how when you empower someone, what you're doing is you're letting them own an experience. You're giving them the space to see it for themselves. And so, one way of teaching that the power dynamic, one way of learning and being is for someone to say, this is how it is, and for someone to repeat after them, this is how it is. But that doesn't necessarily leave a person with the ability to navigate any situations. All they can do is repeat that phrase, right? But when you empower somebody to actually make sense of something themselves, and you give them the room to maybe make mistakes, maybe not get it the way that an expert would get it, maybe not necessarily even get there in a linear fashion, but take a lot of time, the person comes out of that experience with an understanding of a lot more than just what they learned as a result. So, I think of, when I think of redefining power, I think about it more as what empowerment does is it allows people to own their experiences and therefore become more able to navigate the subtleties and nuances of their own life in a meaningful way. And of course, you need to provide people with space to do that. And the traditional relationship of sort of faculty member as expert and student as pupil that's repeating, blending those lines and pushing faculty to be a little bit more like a student and pushing a student to be a little bit more like a teacher where you're sharing the learning together. What that does is it enriches everybody's understanding of things beyond simply what they already know. So, empowerment is more than just a political action. It's an expansion of awareness that you get as a consequence. And so I'm for it.
Thank you. That's way too beautiful. Okay. Those must be some thoughts that you have, accumulated throughout the entire year, every day, I guess in every moment, and we see every change and every shift in our dynamics, as an entire school. So again, you've been with us since the beginning, and you've been there for the struggle. You witnessed all of them, and also, you also have the opportunities to present to external visitors about what we have done here at Fulbright. Can you share us about your thoughts about what when you share with them about the goals and accomplishments we have done? Can you share us about the thoughts that what you really wish that they could see?
Yeah. The very first time I started messaging about Fulbright, I actually led people through a math problem. And I led it through, not in a way of memorizing an equation, but actually thinking, and doing a way of approaching problem solving that people could get an understanding of what it's like to have an insight. And it's really difficult to explain to somebody what an insight is. It's much more powerful to have people have an opportunity to have an insight. And the co-design year has been a whole series of insights. You know, in some ways, we're not building the university, we're discovering it. And we're not arriving at answers that anybody had selected in advance. We're coming up with answers and ideas that we're arriving at. So when I try and explain that process to someone from the outside, it's a little bit like trying to explain an insight. And everyone will just focus on the final answer and sort of what is that like. But what I've been talking about is that you know, in education, you're in the business of thinking for the long term. How do you set someone up to be a learner in the long term? And you don't ever achieve that in a moment. You achieve that by basically giving people direction, providing directions and openings for people to then be able to expand into and take over time. And in some sense, that's the way, when I talk about what we're doing in the design year, is we're actually attempting to build the skills of lifelong learning, not just in classes, but as a way of being as a community. Because at the end of the day, whether or not you're in the co-design year or a course or a conversation with your roommate, all of those are opportunities to explore, expand, and see bigger than what you already know. But it takes being willing to commit to that. You know, so I often will, when I'm explaining the co-design year, talk about Fulbright's principles, that people learn when they can get their hands dirty and take risks and experiment, learn in the mess and see beyond that. And the co-design year is simply an approach to designing an education that uses that learning philosophy as its own design basis, not just the philosophy of the classroom. One of the things I see in the way the co-designers change is you can watch when people start to own questions because they're naturally interested and curious. And you can watch the co-designers from having started this experience, you know, sort of a little bit nervous and a little bit wary and trying to say the right thing and trying to understand what's happening, to now asking questions where you can see when people are authentic and deeply curious and wanting to understand something and wanting to give feedback on something and wanting to engage about something. When I first started teaching a long time ago, I was at a very large university, and a lot of students would go through their classes just trying to go through the hoops, trying to jump through, tell me what's going to be on the test. That's what I'm going to study. I want to pass the test so I get a grade and I can go and get my degree. And there was no appreciation for the wonder and mystery. And I would teach math classes and people would obsess about the formulas and have no idea of the magic, the pattern magic that was underneath it all. And that was heartbreaking to me. And in some sense, my whole career has been about trying to respond to that reality that, you know, I don't want a university educational experience to be a bunch of hoops that people feel like they need to go through. It should really be about discovery and motivated to uncover the beautiful wonders of the world and what's possible. So the co-designers have started to do that, you know, and transition from this idea that, okay, it's not, you know, it's not just about getting through the hoops. There's more here, and my ability to see and contribute and participate matters. And that's the kind of thing that will make Fulbright a profoundly valuable educational experience. I mean, we can line up all the hoops we want in terms of a curriculum, but it's the students owning the inquiry, owning the questions and owning the problems. And the thing that's interesting is we haven't even started, and already the co-design year students are showing that ability and owning the questions and really owning the inquiry and discovery of the university together. Very significant change. And yeah, and it makes me proud.
Tao nhớ rồi, cái kiểu cười đau khổ lúc mà 3 giờ sáng mà chưa làm xong bài có được đó.
After having gone through that module, I have a lot more trust for them and what they're able to do together. Yay! Kiddo loves debate. I have realized.
Chị là rất là quý vị có bao giờ mình gần gũi với nhau được như thế này?
Gia đình nhỏ xinh.
Being a professor at Fulbright was more than just being an instructor and conveying knowledge, but it was engaging with students. I could really learn a lot myself.
Okay.
I think diversity is something that's really iconic at Fulbright.
I like to say, learning in the mess, you have to spend time really thinking things through and engaging in questions and problems together. And I think what we've done at the co-design year is recognize that that's actually what learning looks like, and it's not the moment, the product that you produce out of that, as much as it is the attitude that gets developed.
That's also fair.
Oh my god, that was so awesome. Thank you.